Baby, I bet I could make you smile. Background: I used to work long hours in a store in a mall a while ago, and I live with my parents. I'm female, and at the time I was in my early 20s, I sold women's clothing. I'm used to getting hit on since sometimes people find me attractive, but I never had anything like this happen before. One day, I saw I had a message from my mom during my break. The voicemail was mostly her crying, and through the tears, she told me that she had found my puppy dying on the floor, and now he was in the ICU. I cried quietly on a bench in the mall, trying not to draw much attention to myself, but a man came up and asked why I was crying. "My puppy's dying," I said. He started trying to flirt with me afterwards, asking me a ton of personal questions. "Sorry, dude. Look, my dog is dying. I can't really talk about this right now," I said. "Oh, I get it. My dog died once. So you work at that store, right?" "I have to go," I said, and composed myself to finish my shift. I realized I forgot to take off the lanyard with my store's name on it. Shit, I hoped he hadn't seen it. I finished my shift without incident, but the next day I had the same shift and the whole sales floor to myself. I was doing my normal routine things when I got poked hard in the back and whirled around. It was the guy. He reeked of pot and beer. "Hey, gorgeous. I just came by to see how your dog was doing." "Sure, can I help you find anything?" I said. "So, I own a comic book store. Do you like comics?" He said. "They're good. Do you need help finding any clothes?" I picked up a dress I had nearby and held it up to him. I put on a creepy smile and tilted my head, trying to imitate the scariest thing I know and hoping he'd take a hint. He touched my arm. "Baby, I bet I can make you smile. How about we see a movie? What time do you get off work? My family is rich. I can give you a lot." I looked at the nearest security camera. I made a gesture, hoping one of the guys would come down. They didn't. I jerked my arm away. "Sir, please don't touch me. Unless you're here to buy women's clothing, we don't have to talk." "How about after your shift?" he said. "I'm a lesbian, and I'm also not interested. Please leave now. I didn't tell you where I worked. You followed me here and memorized what time I usually work, and you touched me twice without consent. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave my sales floor." He laughed. "You're not gay. You just haven't met me yet." "I don't give up," he said. I gritted my teeth, and a cashier in another section noticed the murder in my eyes and started walking towards him, looking concerned for me. The man didn't notice my 80th hint and tried to touch me again, and I ran. I ran to the furthest possible point away from him and collapsed to the floor shaking. I was frightened and angry. I'm highly trained in self-defense, but I would have gone fired if I hit him, even though he touched me and was being aggressive. The next day I called out of work and explained why. My manager covered for me, and the guy did come in again to ask me out. She escorted him off the premises, but it was a week or two before he stopped coming by, looking for me. I had my shifts changed. Updates: my puppy is okay. He lived, grew up into a beautiful dog, and a very sweet one. My dad saved me. I was 13 years old at the time, now 22, and on vacation with my parents in Turkey. We were in an all-inclusive hotel enjoying the holidays. The hotel was full of tourists from different countries. There was this one guy around 20 who was staring at me for some time. I felt uncomfortable and asked him how he was doing. Wrong choice. The next few days, everywhere where I was, he was also suddenly appearing, kind of flirty and just lurking around for hours watching me. He had a really strange vibe around him, and I felt I shouldn't be alone with him. Now, I was still young, so my parents didn't want to leave me alone in a foreign country, so he could not bother me any further. But one night, there was entertainment in the hotel, which became boring to me after some time. I told my parents I wanted to go to my own hotel room and I would be seeing them in the morning. I left and walked to the elevator. What I didn't know was that the guy who was watching me for days saw me leaving, and he had followed me. When I saw him also coming in, I was in great fear. He looked at me with a sinister smile. This is it, I thought. Rape, assault, or maybe even worse. And just before the door of the elevators were closing, someone stuck his foot in between in order to prevent the doors from closing. I am not kidding. All I could see was a boot. The doors opened, and it was my dad. He saw that the creepy guy was leaving at the exact same time I had left and didn't trust it. He looked the guy in the eye and said hello. My dad took me to my hotel room. To this day, I am so glad for the rescue because I don't want to know what would have happened if he didn't. The mystery of the 90s long-distance stalker. Back in the early 90s, when I was a wild teenager, I met John at a party through my friend Cindy. John was an old high school friend of her brother's, and he was in town for a short visit. I was 16 and he was 21. I thought John was cute and he was definitely flirting with me. He lived halfway across the country in the USA, so I figured I would never see him again when he left, but then he asked for my address and phone number so we could keep in touch. My 16-year-old self was giddy. This hot 21-year-old guy wants to stay in touch. Hell yes, you can have my information. As soon as John got home, he called me long distance. Then letters started arriving, sometimes several per week. Soon a letter arrived with stamps all over it, indicating it was mailed from jail. He got into some trouble he refused to tell me about, but said he wouldn't be in jail long because he was innocent. Months go by, and John was still writing at least once a week. I was living with my parents, but they were never home in the afternoon. I always got the mail when I got home from school, avoiding them seeing the prison stamp letters being sent to their 16-year-old daughter. The letters started getting a lot more personal. He drew me pictures, he wrote poems. He went on and on about what kind of life he wanted. He wanted for me to send pics. Then he wanted sexier pics. I wrote him every 2 weeks or so, not nearly the amount of letters he was sending me. One day, John calls and says he is out of jail for the time being, but he has to still go to court for some shit, so he might get locked up again. I tried to find out why, but he wouldn't tell me. He said it didn't matter because it was innocent, and it was all fucked up, etc., etc., etc. He started calling again, a lot. I was 17 now and rarely ever home, and he started calling later and later at night, which got me in trouble. He was getting more and more obsessed with constantly knowing everything I did. This guy was not my boyfriend. I never said he was, and we even discussed guys I like and dates I went on, but he totally changed his attitude over time. I was tired of his interrogations, and one night when he called, I lied and said I hadn't done anything. I was sick and in my room sleeping. I just wanted to get off the phone and go to bed. He flipped out and proceeded to tell me exactly what I'd done that night and name the people I was with. My brain broke and I just hung up and took the phone off the hook. After a sleepless night, I called everyone the next day. John was 1,000 miles away, yet somehow he knew where I was last night, and he knew like the instant I got home because the phone started ringing before I could even close the front door. What the fuckity fuck, right? No one knew anything about it. I talked to Cindy and her brother. They hadn't talked to him. Her bro said he was her old high school buddy, but he hadn't really known the guy for years and didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. Now a large number of people were freaked out. The circle of inquiry expanded. As everyone tried to figure it out, we found no answers. John called every night, but I didn't answer. After 10 p.m., I would take the phone off the hook in my bedroom. He wrote me more letters then, detailing the things I was doing and who I was with, telling me how much I meant to him, and he couldn't understand why I wouldn't talk to him. The letters were still postmarked from his home state, and the call is still coming from his area code, so I was pretty sure he wasn't in town. But how the fuck was he getting this information? I continued to ignore his calls and didn't write back. I was hoping he would get bored and give up. I didn't want to get the cops involved because I didn't want my letters to him being dragged into anything, because I told him some personal stuff I didn't exactly want other people reading. The other stuff I said was just minor drama stuff, and I really didn't like cops and did not want to involve them in my life. Finally, I was on the verge of going to the police. I actually started writing out a statement with a timeline and sorted a pile of letters from him, but then the phone calls and letters suddenly stopped. A month later, I got another letter covered in stamps. He was back in jail and crazy as ever. It was like 20 fucking pages, front and back, wall to wall, pure batshit crazy, with doodles covering every square inch of paper. I wrote back a single page with only enough words to explain that if he ever wrote or called me again, I would take every single page he had ever written me and send copies to the police in his local city, the warden of his jail he was in, and to his old high school buddy Cindy's brother. I never heard from John again. I also never figured out how he was stalking me either. Of all my friends back then, I can't think of any one of them who would have been playing spy for this guy and lie about it. I even tried switching up the people I was hanging out with, but John would still know, and his letter would be like, "Did you have fun after school on Tuesday with your new friend? Are you working on an assignment together?" I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a home computer. I didn't talk on the phone about the things he knew about. The only thing I could come up with is John must have paid someone to watch me, because without the internet, this guy managed to stalk me from 1,000 miles away. To this day, no one in my family knows about this. I'm not going to hurt you. My story takes place around 2 years ago in a small town less than an hour and a half drive from the New Orleans, Louisiana. I would normally never set foot in this town, as it is almost constantly enveloped by a thick, rotting odor from the local paper mill. The town also resembles a cross between a post-apocalyptic movie set and a third-world nation. It's like a festering store of wealth inequality and urban decay. I was and still am a collections agent for a rental company. That's what I was doing there. I was sent to fetch a refrigerator and a washing machine for a delinquent customer. I would like to point out over 99% of repossessions are voluntary. I'm not going around breaking into people's homes or any crazy shit like that. The other less than 1% involves a police escort and are forceful. However, in this line of work, one does tend to see a lot of creepy shit. I pulled up to a dilapidated house, only one street over from a busy thoroughfare. I exited the cargo van, and the first thing I noticed was a man sitting in a chair on the porch. He is somewhat short and appears to be solid muscle, which were on display due to a tank top shirt he wore. He looked grungy and in need of a shower. I figured the guy was probably in his mid-30s. I approached the porch. The guy was sprawled across the chair, drinking straight from a bottle Fireball. He said nothing as I approached, just eerily silence. I walked up the steps and greeted him with, "Hey, how are you doing?" Instead of follow-up greeting, he responded with something that would send chills down my spine. "I'm not gonna hurt you." "Of course not, why would you?" I thought to myself. I'm a big 26-year-old guy. I probably look intimidating. I told him that I was there to pick up a couple of appliances. I believe at this point he indicated that this was just visiting, but the customer was inside. He got up and let me inside. I walked into the unkept house, which smelled of cigarettes and raw sewage. That is typical. I then went back to the cargo van and fetched the appliance dolly. Upon re-entering the disgusting house, the man led me into the washing machine, which is located deep within the interior of the home. Boxes of junk, trash, and other obstacles made pushing the dolly through the house a challenge. As I was unhooking the water supply lines from the washer, he informed me that he is bisexual. I responded with something along the lines of, "Cool story, bro. There's nothing wrong with that." He then added that the lady who owns the property does not know about his sexuality, and he asked me not to tell her. I agreed. The actual customer did not really say anything to me. She seemed to be unfriendly, and probably just wanted to stay out of the way. I strapped the washer to the dolly, and he removed obstacles from my path as I wheeled the washer through the cluttered house. It was truly helpful, and I appreciated it. When I reached the van, he helped me load the washer inside. I climbed into the van in order to strap it in place. To my horror, he climbed in after me. He then randomly tells me that there is a white guy who works at the paper mill who pays him $30 an hour for oral sex. He cheerfully added, "That thing is so pretty. There ain't a mark on it." I think, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? We then loaded up the refrigerator. As I was strapping it to the dolly, he began to grind up against me, but disguised it as an accident. It became painfully obvious that it was not an accident when he started to stroke my arm with his hand. I was annoyed at this point, but I ignored his advances. I felt as though I couldn't say anything. I was on the clock and wanted to avoid drama. We lowered the refrigerator into the van, and once again he climbed inside with me. He then says, "I need your help." "What can I help you with?" I asked. "I need some help." His tone sounded agitated, as if I should already know what he meant. Again, I asked him what he means. He said, "I helped you load this stuff. You couldn't have done it without me," which was not true. "Do you want me to pay you?" I asked. "I don't carry cash, but I can run to the ATM or something." "No, I need you to suck my dick!" I was caught off guard. I guess I should have seen it coming, but I was so naive when it comes to situations like this. I'm the kind of guy who can't even tell when someone is flirting with me. I responded something along the lines of, "I'm not really into casual sex, I'm more relationship-oriented." I'm sure that sounded pretty silly to him. His demeanor changed. He seemed to become angry. "Look, I'm not one to fuck with. You're going to suck my dick." I became very nervous at that point. He had trapped me in the back of the van. I processed the ambiguous threat he made and decided to try to reason with him. The only thing I could come up with is that I need to get to the cab of the van to write the customer a receipt. He let me out of the van, only to follow me to the cab. I fetched a receipt book and struggled to fill it out, as my hands were shaking. He used his body to wedge me against the door. I was trapped once again. "We can't do it here," he said. "I know a place up the road. I'm gonna get in this van, and we're gonna drive up the road. I can't let passengers in the van. It's company policy," I explained. I then spotted a hammer on the floorboard. I thought about grabbing it and using it as a weapon. I decided against it, as it would probably result in me losing my job and maybe even going to prison. I decided to attempt to trick him. "Okay, I'll do it. I just can't let you in the van. I'll meet you up the road," I lied. "Go ahead and start walking. I have to get the customer to sign this receipt." He looked skeptical, but agreed, after issuing another ambiguous threat. I don't think he believed me, though. He began to walk up the street, but did not go far. before he turned around to watch me. I honestly don't remember if I got the customer to sign a receipt or not. When I felt that he was at a safe distance, I cranked the van, threw it in drive, and then peeled out in the driveway. I did not know where I was going, but I did not care either, as long as it was in the opposite direction of that fucker. I ended up in the parking lot of a Chinese buffet and placed the call to my supervisor. I told him a brief summary of what just happened. I was shocked when he burst into an insane fit of laughter. I informed that it is not funny. Over the coming months, my supervisor made me regret reporting the incident. He told the story to every new hire and many current employees in an attempt to humiliate me. I still resent him to this day for that, even though he no longer works there. Also, as the months passed, I began to feel guilty for not doing something. I should have called the police and reported the would-be rapist, maybe not for me, but for the people he could potentially harm in the future. It bothers me to think that if he had the testicular fortitude to threaten a big dude like myself, what could he have done to someone smaller and more defenseless? If there is a moral to this story, is that sexual crime transcends gender, age, sexuality, ethnicity, etc. If you experience sexual assault, please do not be afraid to contact the authorities, the appropriate ones. Creepy, muscular would-be rapist. Let's not meet again. The sound of FAP. This is really long, so if it sucks, well then shit, I guess we all wasted some time. Okay, I've been torn as to whether or not I should post this. Not because of such heinous or sinister acts that are involved, but because it's just really fucking weird, and I honestly am still confused about what really happened. Before I begin, I'm a 24-year-old skinny white boy who maybe on a good day breaks into the 6-foot category. People often ask me if I'm gay. I'm not. This is kind of important, as it helped lend some sort of plausible explanation to what happened, I guess. A little over a year ago, I was living out of my car in one of the smaller cities of my state. Not the smallest, probably in the mid-100,000 range as far as the population goes, but definitely not the biggest, and not the most up-to-date on humanities, if you will. Anyways, to keep myself clean, I bounced from gas station bathroom to friend shower to tiny library bathroom to a truck stop 45 minutes out of the city, just to keep myself clean for my job. I personally enjoy the library, as I was able to clean up and then use the internet if I had the time. Oh, I worked 50 or more hours a week in a restaurant, most of my shifts being doubles, and it was fucking god-awful hot on this particular summer. I truly believe the only reason I didn't lose my sanity because of my situation was because I was on a steady supply of some goddamn drugs. Wake up in the morning, get to work, get free coffee there, maybe a coffee with a upper, or 3 if I were particularly dragging. Hung the fuck over, work the morning shift, get some work, pop another upper or 2 if it was gonna be particular busy. If it were slow, just ride my shift out, maybe snag an unfinished beer or 2 off a table I bust, get off work, smell a couple bowls, pop some downers, fall asleep and do it all over again. Now, I may have been taking drugs, but do not let that take away from the legitimacy of the forthcoming creep. On my break one day, I mosey over to the library. It had been long enough since my last visit. I figured I wouldn't be suspected of being a makeshift bum, and have enough time after I shave and wash my pits to surf the internet a little bit. Awesome. I get to be lazy. I'm sitting there. The library is pretty packed for a Monday afternoon, but I think nothing of it. I see a guy who's a cook, a couple computers down. Cool, I thought. Cool, there's Ted. What up, Ted? I continue my surfing, occasionally glancing around at the other people occupying my surroundings. Some older women, a couple elderly men, and then a not quite middle-aged man. This not quite middle-aged man just looked weird. Maybe it was because my field of vision fell on him, but he was staring right at me, with his mouth slightly open. Maybe it was because he honestly looked like he had some kind of a disorder or something. He didn't look like he was living Down syndrome, more like normal than that, but not that much. He looked like a caveman, protruding forehead, eyebrow bone things, small beady eyes with glasses. He just looked off. Other than the physical features, he dressed normal. Off-brand golf shirt, jeans, normal shoes. Or maybe just because he didn't just look away once we made eye contact like, oops, I was just spacing out at you, man. He tried to stare me down. I stared right the fuck back because he had been looking at me. And I wasn't like looking around mean-mugging people. I was just looking around to look around. We stared at each other for a couple of increasingly tense seconds, his mouth still open, like he was strangely struck by my presence or some shit, and me just trying to not back down because fuck him, I was just browsing the internets. I can't remember who broke first, but one of us did, and I resume my surfing. A couple minutes pass and I feel eyes. I casually scan the room, only to find this motherfucker staring at me again, mouth open. Now the part of town I was in was a mix. It was a half upper middle to filthy rich people and middle to lower poor ass meth heads. You go a mile away, take a left, and you're in super luxurious neighborhoods. You go the opposite, you're surrounded by ignorant, gangbanging motherfuckers. So this library is a little bit of a mixed pot. I can't tell if Caveman Joe here wants to jump me and steal my wallet or knock me over the head and rape me. I know I said nothing about homosexual rape as being in the mix, but it was just the look that he gave. We stare at each other yet again. It ends, and I continue surfing. It gets closer to the evening shift, and I have to shit. I log off, grab my backpack, and mosey over to the bathroom, lock the stall door, and begin to poop. Now, I have a kind of bad habit of writing on bathroom stalls. I wasn't doing anything hilarious or groundbreaking or anything like that, just a couple tags to take my mind off the poop so the poop would not feel performance anxiety. I finish the tag, and I hear the bathroom door open and someone come into the stall next to me. Pants drop, and the guy in the stall begins making a lot of strange noises. Some disturbing grunts and sighs, spaced far enough between each other to be passed off as a battle in a sphincter. But regardless of how hard of a time a man has shitting, the sounds that this guy were making were creepy and disturbing. They were almost sexual. Anyways, I dropped my deuce, but remained seated because I felt like I had some more art to beautify this particular stall with, and I didn't want this weirdo hearing my marker streaks. I remain still, and this guy keeps shifting and moving his feet around. He moves his foot closer to the interior of my stall, then moves it back, then again slides it closer, and then retreats. He does this a couple more times, all the while making these strange, sexual noises. Suddenly, his movements and moans stop, and I think, yes, he finally got a hold of that demon turd. He's gonna be gone in no time. Some extremely awkward silence begins to take over. I think if someone had come right before his feet stopped flirting with the stall boundaries and pissed in a urinal or something. This guy left shortly after this awkward silence takes over. Bathroom door slowly closes, and it's just me. And what I assumed was this person. A little more awkward silence is peppered in, and suddenly, I hear it. An unmistakable sound. It was rapid and in bursts. Fat, 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 fat. I wasn't sure at first. Did I just hallucinate? Fat, 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 fat. His feet stretched out and fidgeted. Fat, 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 fat. Okay, time to go. I finished my turd, capped my Sharpie, and went to wash my hands. As I begin to wash the soap off, I hear his belt jiggling and the toilet flush. Fuck, fuck, fuck. This was my inner dialogue. Who comes up to the sink next to me? Motherfucking Caveman Joe. I glanced when he was even with me at the sinks, and when I saw it was him, my eyes darted back to the sink. I didn't give a fuck. I hit the faucet off with soap, still on my hands, and turned to the opposite wall to find the paper towels. There was no fucking paper towels. I looked to see Caveman Joe just standing washing his hands with his creepy ass smile on his face, and almost instantly he looks at me in the mirror. I look away, punch the air vent dryer thing on, and run my hands under it, and then look back to this weird ass motherfucker. He creeps over towards me. He sticks his hand under the one next to mine, and I'm just staring at him. He's just smiling eerily at me. I figured at this point, he's either gonna slam my head into the wall, drag me out by my feet and rape me in his mother's basement, or start some ignorant shit, trying to start a fight. I initially react to the presence of him and say, "How's it going?" All the while ready to stab this dude in the throat with my box cutter I keep in my pocket during this car-living stage of my life. He mumbles something and looks down. I immediately book it out of the bathroom into my car. I watch over my shoulder from the second I left the bathroom and never saw him leave, so I hopped in my car and tore ass out of the parking lot. I got ready for work someplace far away from that library inside of town, took some more drugs, and quickly pushed his memory to the back of my mind. It was just some extremely creepy dude, being creepy. I think he thought I was gay, so he followed me to the bathroom, then tried to throw me some signal to get me on his nuts by fapping. This is extremely long and nothing like any of the other top stories, and I'm sorry if you took all the time to read all this. Unless you like the way I wrote it, in case, thank you profusely, and serenade you until you punch me in the throat. Forgive me. I lost like 2 hours from the time I opened Reddit to now, so I'm sure there are mistakes. If only you were 6 years older. This happened the middle of December of 2012. I was 12 years old, going through what a normal 12-year-old should be. I was mentally screwed with a lot. Parents separated at a young age, forced to leave my 2 half-brothers with my mother, whom I was so attached to, lived with my dad, who later became depressed and fell into drugs, specifically heroin. Mother was a pill junkie. I was stuck between addicts, slowly learning what was occurring around me. It really hit me when my little sister came up to me with a dirty needle in her hand, asking innocently, "What's this?" And I screamed and yelled at her to throw it down and wash her hands and checking every inch of her body for marks if it touched her. Countless tears whilst asking my father, "Please wake up. Why won't you wake up? My life was a mess. I still think about it this time of my life and I have breakdowns." Since it was December, I was able to go over to my mother's place and spend some time with her and my beloved half-brother's little sister, and occasionally my brother's friend, who I've become close to over the times I visited. He was basically a part of our family clique in which we formed. Time passes on. I'm enjoying myself with my brothers and sisters. We would spend our time in the basement. This basement was basically a bedroom. It had a TV, bed, couch, whatever you needed for it to be a bedroom. It was pretty cool. And our hangout spot. More time passes. It becomes dark. We're all migrated upstairs only because the pizza was arrived. We're just talking, having fun. Then, there's a bang at the door. Another one of her junkie friends, cool. Until she lets this guy in. At first glance, you can tell this dude's weird. Greasy hair, acne craters, sweaty, classic black trench coats, black boots, skinny, tall as hell. Naturally, I'm put off by it. I'm used to seeing some weird people come around. Due to my father and mother being both thanes and sellers, you get used to it, but you always have your guard up regardless, or at least I did. So they end up doing their thing. We mind our business, he leaves. My mom ends up having to leave somewhere. She takes her little sister with her. More time passes. My brothers end up going downstairs to hang out, while just me and their friend D. We're just talking, and I end up asking about this creepy guy. I end up finding out that he actually tries flirting with my little sister. Not sure exactly what he meant as in flirting, but I didn't try to pry into it. All he told me was that he'd stared at her, and my mom even caught him trying to sneak off into her room at some point apparently. Wanna know what's crazy? She was only 4 at the time. Sick fuck. Not too long after that conversation, there's a bang at the door. It sounded like the same bang earlier from the guy who was just there. This door is made if you're tall enough, you can see through the glass part made into the door into the living room, and since he was god-awful tall, he could easily. And since the couch being set up where we were sitting at, he could see right at us. Fuck. He sees us sitting there, and he has a shit grin on his face. His eyes are locked onto mine. He then says loudly, "Let me in, I'm your friend's mom. She said I can come back in." Now, dealing with these weird junkies, you don't want to anger them, so we're basically forced to let this weird dude in. Great. Not only was his presence weird enough without even talking to him, we basically have to sit here with him until my mom gets back. He sits down on the couch parallel from us, and I don't recall what we talked about, but I specifically remember him crushing a Xanax bar and then using $1 to snort it up right in front of us. How polite. And him trying to get me to go to the store with him until D spoke up and said, "I'll go instead," which led to this guy magically changing his mind. I don't want to move from this spot on the couch, but I noticed my brand new iPod 4 was sitting on the windowsill near him, and I didn't want him somehow miraculously taking it and being heartbroken, so I mustered up the courage to get up from my seat beside D, walk over to it, passing right in front of this creep. I finally reached my destination, his eyes following my every move. He asked me a question. "Are you my mom's name's daughter?" Yeah, huh. You look just like her," and then whistles. Thanks. How old are you?" 12. Damn. If only you were 6 years older, you would be mine. So I wouldn't have to be going after your mom anymore. But you're still so sexy, you'd be mine now anyways, while looking me up and down. Now guys, this dude had to be in his fucking 30s, hitting on a 12-year-old. That's when I fucking froze. He then gets up beside me and tries to look at my iPod, trying to take it away from me, and that's when I remember all the things D told me about what he was doing to my sister. In a fit of rage, I yelled, "Get away from me, you creep!" Apparently, it was loud enough for my brothers to hear it and came running up the basement stairs. I made a dash away from the disgusting smelling man, back to the couch where D was now standing at. My brother's now upstairs asking what happened, why did I yell, and I didn't even hesitate to say, "He just tried to fucking hit on me." Of course, this shitface denies it, but my brothers already knew about this guy constantly coming over, being weird to our little sister, and of course, they're going to believe me over this greasy addict. My second oldest brother, M, says in an obviously angry, calm voice to him, "What are you doing here without our mom being here?" Creepface explains what he told D and I, and it was clearly a bullshit lie. My mom may have been an addict, but she kept her best to keep us away, out of harm's reach, as best as she could. As hypocritical as that sounds, Now M is a ticking time bomb. If anyone tries to get with his family, he is not afraid to try and do anything about it. Instances where my mom was in an abusive relationship and he'd seen her significant other hit her, he instantly jumped in, beat the living hell out of the guy. He's not too big, but he's bulky, and around this time he was around 15 to 16 years old and 6 feet tall. This set him off the fucking edge. When I told him what he said to me, he raged at him, throwing him onto the ground, on top of this man just beating him, to the point where D, my oldest brother, had to drag him off of him. As they were pulling M off of this creep, M yelled, "Stay the fuck away from my sister!" I got a quick glance at the creep now bloodied face, and he still had a grin on his face. He made his way up and near the door and said, "I'll be back. Fuck you and your fucking mom. And if I see this little girl again, I'll have a nice surprise for her," and slammed the door. We ended up telling my mom when she came back, and she did nothing about it. Probably because of the fact that he was a customer and practically harmless, I guess, at the time to her. Considering he got his ass beat by a 15, 16-year-old, it wasn't too surprising either. I went home the next day in the morning. I didn't see the guy until a year later, and he sure did have a grudge against me. I'd also like to mention, my sister was never sexually or in any other way harmed by this guy. He just loved to be a fucking creep.